Hello, 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 hello. Espero que estejam bem. Rui Borba, máquina. Vamos ter aqui o Bob Malone da Yamaha. Vai ser uma entrevista muito interessante e diferente. Vamos lá ver aqui. Bob is there. Alright. Hi, Bob.
Hey, Luis. How are
Hey,
you?
you right?
Yeah, good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Really honored to have you here, as I told you in private on my messages. It's an honor for us Portuguese people to speak with you a bit and to understand a bit of what is behind the manufacturing and the design of the trumpets and what you do. So, Bob, can you tell us first? We always start like this: who you are, how you did start working in these kind of things, and where.
Sure. Uh, well, I started as probably a lot of players did as a young boy learning music, and I chose trumpet. So I started in the school system, school music in the U.S.
Yes.
And it's common that we usually start, well, in sixth grade. Fifth grade is when I started. Um, and it turned out that trumpet was a good choice for me.
Yes.
I was able to play it pretty easily. It wasn't difficult for me. And and so that started my path in life. And it was my goal to become a professional trumpet player. So I went through high school and university, and hoping that eventually one day I would be able to play in a major symphony orchestra
Yes.
someplace.
Awesome.
So yeah, so that's along the way. Of course, I studied with some great teachers. One of my first teachers in Los Angeles was Walter Larson,
Wow.
and Walter Larson, his teacher was Herbert L. Clark. Um,
Exactly.
and not many people know Walter Larson, but if you know Malcolm McNabb, uh, Walter was Malcolm's teacher as well.
Yes.
And so he was very respected and loved, especially in Los Angeles. And then from there, I had the great fortune to be accepted as a student of Tom Stevens. And so I studied with Tom, and he introduced me to Jimmy Stamp, and I studied with Jimmy and Tom at the same time. So, so that's kind of my trumpet student history, and Tom Stevens, you know,
That's incredible.
yeah, it was. I was so fortunate, and I don't think I would be sitting here talking with you had it not been for Tom Stevens, because he played such an important role in my life, in my professional life, in doing what I'm doing now.
Yes.
So that was important. But when I was a college student, of course, college students don't make very much money,
Exactly.
right? And as a young freelance trumpet player in Los Angeles, I needed to get another job, a part-time job, to help pay my bills. And one of my roommates at the time worked for a man in Los Angeles named Larry Minnick. And Larry Minnick was very famous, especially in low brass and trombone players. He was an innovator and came up with some things that I think most trombone players take for granted now, like open wrap and things like that. But my roommate was able to convince Larry to give me a job had no experience at all. And really keeping the shop clean was maybe my first job. And then he started teaching me, and it was like an apprenticeship with him. And as I got into it, I discovered that I enjoyed it very much. I had some talent with that, and maybe even something in my family history. My father was an engineer, and so
All right.
So that could have been, part of it too.
As well, yes.
Yeah.
So you were on that time, you were just repairing instruments or building instruments already?
Well, when I started, it was working for Larry, and it was repairing.
Repairing. Okay.
Right, primarily. But one of the first jobs that I did for him was to build a drawbench. And that's when I learned machining. I learned how to use a milling machine to build the parts needed to put together this piece of equipment. And that drawbench we used to pull tubes for trombones, so trombone slides and lead pipes and things like that. So it was a combination of making things for Larry and repairing mostly trumpets, but other instruments as well.
That's awesome. That's incredible. I didn't know I knew some of your youngest story, so who taught you and all that, but I didn't know about James Stump, which was for me was a surprise, right?
Yeah, here you go.
Everyone in the world, wow.
Can you
Everyone
see
in the world is a James Stump fan. That's incredible.
So this is a check I wrote to him, a payment for one of my lessons.
Wow.
So you can see in December 1978, a lesson with Jimmy Stamp cost $20.
That's awesome. But on that time, $20 was a lot.
It was.
Yes, it was a lot. So the economy was different. But that's incredible. And now I understand some things that I will ask you after, because learning from so many great trumpeters and being a great trumpeter as you are as well, and you will, it helps to be good on what you do now, for sure. So
it did. Mm-hmm.
we will be there. So as a player, where did you play, or what were your experiences after that? Did you play much? Did you put it as a second or as a hobby, or how did you manage to do it?
Well, in the beginning, I really was still focused on a career as a trumpet player, and so working for Larry was important, of course, but it wasn't my main focus.
All right.
And so typical, work that's available to a young player in Los Angeles, playing in some smaller orchestras, playing in churches, doing weddings, that type of thing. A few recordings, but not very many. But then I was offered the opportunity to play at Disneyland, and so that was a great experience. And I played in a group, the Fanfare Trumpet group there, and I think that started in Christmas of 1978, something like that. But there were a lot of great players who went through and played at Disneyland. And that's when I first met Wayne Bergeron. He and I played there together. A great trombone player, Andy Martin, who's fabulous jazz trombonist, LA studio player. Andy, I had no idea played trombone because he played trumpet in my Fanfare Trumpet group the first year that I played, So I played there for 1 year was full-time and continuing to work for Larry, but I played at Disneyland until 1987.
All right.
And that's when I stopped.
That's okay. So, and then you decided to stop the career as a trumpet player.
That's when I did. I as I got better as a technician, brass technician, I started experimenting on my own trumpets to try to improve them and make them better. And that's when I got into very deep into research on lead pipes and tapers and things like that. And in 1983, I started my own business, Bob Malone's Brass Technology,
Yes.
still working at Larry's shop, and I would pay him rent for use of his machines and things like that, but continuing to play trumpet. And then in 1987, Larry decided to kind of retire and move away from Los Angeles. So I had to make the decision of what I wanted to do. And at that point, my business had developed. Was making lead pipes and doing conversions, and I had some great players playing my instruments that I had built for them. So at that point, I had to make a decision, and it became obvious to me that what I should be doing for my life is that, and not trying to play, not trying to perform. So that's the year that I decided I would stop trying to play professionally, and I would devote all of my time with that.
Well, thanks God that you did. Anyway, I know we lost a great trumpet player, but it's so important to have a great player doing what you do, building as well, because usually the brands that build instruments without being a player themselves, I don't know, is always missing something there, or is missing the passion, and what you do is really, really good. And we had a lot of Yamaha players here as well that they love you and they love what you do. And let's go to that now. So at the moment you are the Yamaha director in LA.
Yes, I'm director of the ateliers and R&D in America, and so any new instrument development that goes on in North America, I am usually a part of it. I oversee woodwind development as well.
Yes.
But of course, I'm not designing woodwind instruments myself. I've got a great staff that does that. But we have two ateliers, one in New York City, at Yamaha Artist Services Incorporated. It's right in the heart of Manhattan on 5th Avenue and 54th Street. And we've got fabulous staff there. Wayne Tanabe, also very famous technician, and Tomoji Hirokata, very kind of god of woodwind technicians in New York, and then Tom Kamichek, who handles the business part of it. In Los Angeles, I'm based there, but we have a great staff also. Jeff Peterson, who is the manager of the atelier, and Koya Sukagawa, who is a master woodwind technician, and then Rory Mazzella, who handles our inventory and some business things. But that's where I'm based.
All right. So let me ask you a few things. So I've always played with Yamaha instruments, even when I was in the army band in Portugal. So on the time I was playing with one of the first Zeno models. And then when I moved to England, playing in England, I was playing with a Yamaha 6335.
Oh yeah.
Gold plated. I loved it. I know it's an entrance level to but for me it was that Latin sound was there. Really balanced and really easy to play. And then I had a big discussion, and I saw that so this channel is Portuguese, and this guy will watch it. He's a professional Portuguese player. But he's always discussing, I will not say his name because I'm his friend, but he's always discussing with people to don't buy one of the Yamaha models because you are bullshitting about that model. Explain us this. So is the 6335 RC that Louis Dodwell plays? The guy keeps saying that it should not be a 6335, a 63 reference, because it's a two-piece bell and not a one-piece bell. So it
Hmm.
should be a 4-3. Do you know what it means? Are you understanding?
Well,
Why do you call it 6335? Because it is a professional model, isn't it?
yes. Hmm.
It is.
It is a professional model, and it was designed at our atelier in Hamburg. Excuse
Yes.
me, yeah, in Hamburg. Eddie Veit was the main designer with that instrument,
Yes.
and clearly aimed at professional players. And so he worked with many of the best European lead trumpet players and commercial players to develop that horn. So it is definitely a professional model. It was
Yes.
designed with professional players for professional players, and that's why, it's in that category.
But what is the difference between the RC and the one that I had always, the 6335?
Well, the lead pipe is different. The tuning slide is different. If you want to also look at the Z trumpet, right? The 6310Z, up until the Gen 2, it was a one-piece valve casing
Yes.
also. So I would say don't get caught up in specs necessarily.
Exactly.
It's what the intention is, and in the end does it work, right? So
Exactly.
it's about the sound and intention and how it performs, who it was designed for.
Well, exactly. Now you said something important. For example, the Bobby Shoe model here in England, and all my colleagues, they use the Bobby Shoe model in big
Hmm.
band, all of them. And we know is not even close the most expensive model you have on Yamaha, and is a great model that works really well for everyone, and
Absolutely.
and is awesome. So let me ask you now about your lead pipes. You are kind of famous because of your the way you conceive the lead pipes and the way you feel the instruments,
Hmm.
and that's why I didn't know about James Stamps, but now let me ask.
Hmm.
James Stamp was always known, and is, I study, and in Portugal we use him a lot. Probably was the first book that arrives in Portugal that everyone used, right?
Okay. Hmm.
Was James Stamp. And Clark, because Clark was the adjunct conductor of John Philip Sousa, which is Portuguese. He is
Hmm.
American, but he's Portuguese.
Okay.
So we always know him. So the stump defends always the sound. So the big sound from the bottom to the top, that kind of column in the air, and always the same. Not
Hmm.
not the sound like this when we go up in it. And
Right.
the Yamaha, we can feel that. The
Hmm.
sound is always more or less big and focused and
Hmm.
always the same in all registers. Did you take that from the experiments that you done with Stamp, the way you played when you were trying the instruments? How do
Hmm.
you how did you create that?
Well, Jimmy's concept was simple. Stay in the middle of the pitch, right?
Yes,
And so don't anticipate when you go up and don't anticipate when you go down. So he came up with the little signs,
yes,
the updo sign. So stay down when you're going up and stay up when you're going down. Because if you did push the pitch up as you're going up, um, you would you would end up with kind of squeezing. There would be no room for the notes at the top because you would
yes.
push them, so sharp. And the same in the bottom. So in the middle register, very important to stay in the center of the pitch and maintain that as you go around. So if you do that, then you're going to get the most out of the trumpet that you can. Um, at the time, especially C trumpets, which is what I had done a lot of work on initially. The design of the C trumpet at the time had some problems with it, and the problems created intonation inconsistencies, all of the things that great trumpet players learn to work around with alternate fingerings and learning to push notes up or pull notes down and things like that. but I really wanted to focus on trying to overcome the intonation problems,
Yes.
you know, in the beginning, and that was how I started. So, you know, my design, my basic design for C trumpet pipes was a reverse style lead pipe, but a typical reverse style lead pipe, if you just did that on a C trumpet, would cause other problems because you would, because the top tube, the
Yes.
outside tube moves, where do you mount the brace? And so
Yes.
the only way to do it is to move the brace further on the bell, and then that causes problems of instability and other things. So that's when I came up with the extra tube on the end, the oversleeve. So
Yes.
I could have a reverse style pipe, and I could mount the bell brace in the proper place on the bell. And then for me, it was a matter of experimenting with different types of tapers and venturi sizes and things like that, which is in the beginning, before I made my own pipes, I experimented with every lead pipe taper I could find and studied them and tried them. And the very first pipes that I sold myself were, I started off with Bach #7 lead pipe tapers and a Kahn taper, and I sold those for a while. And I wasn't getting as much out of it as I thought I could, and I had an idea for a taper, and that's when I made my first mandrel, the #1 taper, and eventually made the #2 taper. But that's how that started. But it was focused on trying to overcome intonation issues, trying to create a pipe that would be more consistent, you know, color-wise through the
Yes.
registers, you know, things, and have an optimal kind of resistance for the player.
Yes. All right. That's awesome to know. That's curious about you are talking about the C trumpets, because I had a friend, because of this channel, as I have a lot of supporters, not Yamaha yet. I hope we can sort something. But I have a lot of supporters here, AR Resonance and Robinson Remedies, whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people contact me to buy pipes or to buy this, and I put them in contact with guys. And my teacher from the university is a trumpet player at the Portuguese Symphony Orchestra, and he contacted me a few weeks ago about changing the lead pipe of a Bach C trumpet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't want to have a reverse lead pipe because he doesn't like reverse lead pipe. So I
Mm-hmm.
contacted the guys here in Norwich from the Natural Trumpets in
Mm-hmm.
Norwich, England. They make great, and they said that it's possible, but they don't want to do it if it's not reverse because it will be out of tune and blah blah
Mm-hmm.
blah. How does that work? Is that possible to make a no reverse lead pipe on a C trumpet?
Oh yeah. If you look at the Yamaha artist model trumpets, you know, there's two different versions. So there's a Chicago, which is
Yes.
very similar to the conversions that I was making with, you know, my reverse pipes, and it does use my lead pipe taper MC1.
Okay.
But the New York model is a traditional design, so it has a shorter taper. It has a traditional lead pipe or tuning slide arrangement. And that one also uses one of my lead pipes. It's a MC2 set up
Yes.
like a traditional pipe. The intonation on those instruments are very good. So, you know, it's as we've gotten into developing and me personally learning, um, you know, there's a lot more to trumpets than just the lead pipe. And so, you know, in fact, one of my early mentors, who was an acoustical scientist, he told me one time, he said, remember, everything is connected to everything else. You know, and trumpet players, it's just human nature for someone to say, you know, if you change this, then this other thing is going to happen. You know, we want to say this part controls this part controls that, this part controls the other. But it's, in reality, it's not that way. Everything plays a role in intonation and sound and feel, and your ability as a designer is to take all of those things into account and put them together in a combination that that optimizes all of those things. So yes, it is possible to make a lead pipe, make a trumpet with a traditional short taper lead pipe that does play in tune.
All right.
And I think the New York trumpet does that very well.
All right. Just I will show him this, and because you are someone that we can trust what you are saying, because we know you are talking, you know what you are saying. So this is important for in Portugal. This new thing of changing lead pipes and changing bells. All the now people think the heavy caps make you play a lot, that kind of things. It just came right now. So a few years ago, maybe 7, 8 years ago, I never heard nothing about this. Just when I came to England, of course, I found the Harrelson trumpets really heavy, which is not my thing. I'm not going to talk about that here. So about intonation, and that's why every student, I think, they start with Yamaha, at least in Portugal, everyone with the 2335, the 4335, which is already a really good intermediate trumpet.
It is.
We have a professional guy playing, you know him, I hope so. He's called Luís Macedo. He plays in the only professional big band in Portugal, the Orquestra de Matosinhos, and he plays with a 3335 or a 4335 professionally. He doesn't want to change it. He loves it. He loves it. So, and he's the lead player there. But let me ask you something. Exactly as you were saying. So if you have the lead pipe when you are designing it, of course you have in consideration the bell that will create the balance for that lead pipe. So if we change the lead pipe, the bell maybe will not be the right one for it will change the intonation of the instrument, the easy. And all the Yamaha instruments are made, and I heard something, I don't know if you said it or not, but they are made to sound good. And for me, that's true. They are the trumpets don't always have that kind of beautiful sound, even if my kid takes it and blows it, they sound good. How did you create that? Because if it was easy to copy that or to do the same, any Chinese brand or whatever would copy it and do it. And they keep copying the Yamaha, but they cannot make that on the student instruments. Make them sound good as the 2335, for example. I took one time in the rehearsal a 2335 without watching the number, and I thought I was playing in a 6335 like mine, and it was not. How did you do that?
Well, I think you're right that there's more to it than just simply trying to physically copy the instrument, and it's again, going back to everything connects to everything. So it's figuring out all of those components, and really, when it comes down to it, we're talking making small adjustments here and there that end up having a big effect. And if you're able to put them all together in the right combination, then you have something good. But the path to doing that is kind of a long learning path, and so I think it starts with the intention of what you're identifying what you're trying to accomplish. Yes. And for Yamaha and for me personally, and any of my colleagues, it has to be sound, right? Because if you, in fact, this is interesting. One of the books that I'm reading is, I love photography. I don't know if you know that.
Right.
But
no, I don't know that one.
So I'm reading this book. It's called The Heart of the Photograph. And this guy he's a wonderful author. And he's got some great quotes. And one of them is, don't get overwhelmed and start looking for shortcuts. Craft is a long game. Craft takes intentional focus. applied over time. And it's the same thing when you're learning instrument design. There are no shortcuts. It's a matter of gaining knowledge, of trying, experimenting, failing, and trying to figure out why it didn't work. And then even with experiments that worked well, trying to understand why they worked well, and then choosing the next step based on, on that information. And so if you start with focusing on sound, you have to start somewhere. And so you choose a beginning point and choose your first experiment, and then it's just a journey that you're on, in learning what works. And sometimes the first start is to look at what is out and works well, and what people have accepted as something good. So when we were first starting the artist model trumpets and making the first Chicago model, and I had just moved to join Yamaha officially in 2001, and I moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan from California. Chicago was very close by, and John Hagstrom, he and I were friends, and we had collaborated on a lot of instruments for him as he had, from college through the military and then into the Chicago Symphony. And we were excited to see if we could come up with a trumpet design that would work well in the Chicago Symphony. And of course, that orchestra, Bud Herseth, so famous as a trumpet section, brass section, who were playing these very old, iconic, mid-1950s, Bach, Mount Vernon trumpets. And so to think that you were going to try to make a trumpet that would be a good choice for them to play in that orchestra, that's a challenge, a huge challenge. And so it really is all about sound. And that's when we started our journey. And so it started with looking at those trumpets and then picking some parts that we thought contributed to that sound and putting them into a prototype, that same kind of ideas, and starting from there. But that simply didn't get us to where we needed to go. It was many, many years of experimenting and trying things and trying to understand and so on. And so what started in 2001, is where and again, that intensity of learning and trying never stopped. And now we're in the third generation trumpets that are fabulous, I think. And Norihisa Fukuda and Kyle Furumi, my partners in designing that trumpet, especially Norihisa. It was such a wonderful partnership because both those guys also are trumpet players, and they're great designers, and Norihisa and I, especially, really kind of our minds thought alike, and so it was a great partnership, and we'd come up with something we wanted to try, and then he could make it happen in Japan, even if it was something new. But long story short, it was focusing on the sound as number one. And as we got into learning what kind of sound worked good in an orchestra and what didn't, that allowed us to make choices that helped us along the way. And along the way was also, being sure that we did basic things like be sure the intonation was good, be sure that the trumpet was flexible so the player could change the color of the sound, be sure that it had the right balance of resistance so that it was comfortable to play, all of those kinds of things. And the longer our journey went, the more we got into small details and understanding. And that's where we're at now, is understanding these relationships between different parts of the instrument and how small little changes can make such big differences.
Well, I think everyone, and I was talking with one of my teachers about this, and I think with Miss Di Martino when I done the interview, we can feel the difference on the sound of Yamaha, because one of the things that a lot of people I remember when I was younger was that like Yamaha has the best valves and it sounds really good, easy, but the people wanted that back 37 sound for the orchestras, and they were always saying that Yamaha just loses a beat, is a tiny bit, but for back on this. And now it's not like that. Everyone is turning to Yamaha. Yamaha has that perfect sound for everything we need. So it changed. We can see that it changed with the years. And of course, Bach had many years already doing that back 37s. And they don't do it as well as they done before anymore. So that's why as well. Let me ask you something now as a player, as a professional player. I'm really curious. How the same pipes, the same material can give us different colors. I'm not talking for example, if I'm playing piano, is sweet, and if I play forte, of course, even playing piano, I've played in Yamaha that I can play piano sweet or piano with a totally different color.
Of course, yeah.
Why? How do you think that when you are building it?
Well, I think it's, again, it's a complicated answer because it's not just...
I know.
So part of it is balance of resistance. And so if the resistance is set up well for a player, that gives them more freedom to move in and out of the note, to move pitches around, and the trumpet is helping you. It's not fighting you so much.
Yes.
So part of it is balance of resistance. Part of it is the manufacturing process. It's materials. So you could take any type of brass, and if it's treated different ways, you can get different qualities out of it. So, if you treat it the right way, then you're getting out of it. So that when you're playing at a pianissimo, it's very responsive. It still has a beautiful vocal quality to the sound, but it has the ability, when you push a lot of energy into it, to open up and become, a different voice, right?
Yes.
And that is a challenge. In fact, when we were developing the second generation New York model and working with David Bilger on that, and David is a fabulous player, principal trumpet of the Philadelphia Orchestra. And we had gotten a prototype that was really pretty good, and it got to a point where he could start using it in the orchestra. But he said it didn't do one thing, and he was trying to describe this to us. He said, the trumpet plays great, it's beautiful, but every now and then you need a trumpet to play like this.
Yes.
Right? You need that out of it. And he yelled at us, right? And he did it just like that, and it was kind of a scary almost moment. But it was a great illustration that you need a trumpet player needs all the colors and needs all of the dynamic range. So to have a trumpet that plays beautifully but can play to fortissimo or but that's as far as it goes. That's maybe okay for some trumpet players, maybe a lot of trumpet players, but for someone who's playing at that position, he needs much more than that. And so our challenge was, how do we do that? And so we started again looking at the small details and made changes in several different parts of the instrument in order to retain what was good, not lose that, but give him what he was looking for on the other side.
All right, that's incredible, and it's good to know how you think, the brain behind the technology, because it's not easy. Just to give a big hug is Elio Ramalho here, a Conservatoire Portuguese teacher, my friend.
Okay.
Well, we have a lot of great players coming around, and they will watch this after. Well, let me just ask you a few last questions and a last message. I will not take long from you. We are in 45 minutes already. But Do you have any idea to go to Portugal soon to meet people? I know you have players there. Sergio Charrinho from the Metropolitan, he was here the other day. He's my friend too. Well, a lot. But do you have idea to go there to make a stand? Some when?
Well, you know, I work for Yamaha, of course, and so my travel is really based on what Yamaha needs. And I have traveled in different, you know, parts of the world, you know, for projects and sometimes with promotions. I've been to some very interesting parts. I've been up in a very small village north of the Arctic Circle in Norway on a project in Bodø, Norway. So it is possible, but it really is. That's not a decision that I can make on my own. You know, other people, you know, would need to be a part of that. So you know, if Yamaha would love to send me there, I'd love to go. Of course, Portugal is such a beautiful country, and I've got so many friends there. But maybe someday. So
I
we'll see.
hope so.
Hopefully, you know, the pandemic, you know,
Yes.
goes away soon, and we have a vaccine, and travel becomes safer, and all of that. But maybe someday.
I hope so. If not, we will try to find a way to take you there. Anyway, I'm saying because Portugal is developing now with a mix of schooling. We have a lot of most of the great players that are not playing in Portugal. The Portuguese ones are playing in Germany now, and a lot went to France, like Sergio Charrinho. So the school there has a typical kind of sound and was awesome. Sharjel, for example, they developed now a model called Lusa with Juliano Santana, so inspired in Portugal. But I think Yamaha was the brand to make a trumpet player based in the Portuguese orchestras. Because the players that are there and use Yamaha, they have all the same kind of Sergio Charrinho style, that sound, that feeling, and it will be great to make something based on them. Anyway, the last thing that I will ask you, Bob, is a last message, nothing to do with music. I know you are a good man, and I know you are a humble man since I contacted you the first time, and that's why you are here. These interviews always finish the same way. Since Gabor Tarkovic to Vince Martelo, all of them is a message how to be a man, how to be a good colleague, how to be a good guy, sit on the side of, so not stepping on each other on the music, as we see many times people trying to fight for places in the orchestra, or I play bad, you play well. You know what I mean? What is your message for the new generation, and to change the mind concept of someone that wants to be like you one day as well, as successful, that it doesn't need to be a player, just building trumpets or designing, whatever.
Well, I think that's actually a very important, it's an important thing for success. And I can tell you that I've seen a lot of instances where there have been wonderful players, you know, that can play almost anything. But when they get into the ensemble, it doesn't work out. And it usually doesn't work out, not because of how they play, but because they're not good colleagues.
Exactly.
And so, you know, my message is look outside of yourself, and always look for ways that you can give first. And if you're open-minded and you know, you look outside of yourself and you think about others, good things are going to happen for you. You know, you don't have to be completely centered on yourself in order, you know, to ensure that you get what you need. If you give, you will get back. And if you treat others with respect, no matter who they are, you know, I'm always conscious, even, you know, if a young player came into my shop, to treat them, you know, in the same way that I would treat, you know, Håkan Hardenberg or some, you know, the world's best. And I was taught that by a lot of players. Tom Stevens, You know, he even as I was a student, he treated all of his students like colleagues with respect. And if you do that and you look outside of yourself and you look to give to others, you will get that respect back and you will be successful.
And thank you so much. It's so awesome to listen that from you, and it's an honor for me to have you here. I will keep this in my mind and in my memory, and I hope to meet you soon, Bob. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Luis.
much.
Okay.
God bless.
Thanks to
Bye-bye.
everybody. Okay.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.